Introduction. Why you obey without being forced. You say yes when you mean no. You agree to things that drain you. You comply to avoid tension. You stay silent to keep peace. You follow rules that don't serve you. And you do this automatically, without force, without threats, without punishment. This is not weakness, this is conditioning. Most obedience is invisible. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like control. It feels like politeness, responsibility, maturity, respect. But underneath, it's compliance, automated, reflexive, unconscious. You obey because somewhere along the way you learned that conflict is dangerous. Disapproval is painful. Being liked is safer than being true. Standing alone feels like failure. Authority knows better. Rules protect you. Saying no makes you selfish. These beliefs weren't taught in words. They were installed through experience, through reactions, through consequences, through silence, through approval and withdrawal. And now they run in the background of your mind, shaping decisions you think are yours. This book is about seeing that machinery, not to rebel, not to become defiant or cold, not to reject all authority or burn every bridge, but to reclaim choice. Because there's a difference between choosing to cooperate and being unable to refuse. There's a difference between respecting someone and fearing their disapproval. There's a difference between being kind and being controlled by guilt. This book will show you how compliance gets wired into your nervous system, why guilt works even when you've done nothing wrong, how approval becomes a leash, why conflict feels like danger, how authority overrides your logic, why you accept framed choices without questioning them, how social scripts run your life silently, why reputation controls behavior more than values, how urgency breaks judgment, and how to choose from calm authority instead of automatic pull. This is not about domination, it's about sovereignty. You will not learn tricks. You will learn awareness. You will not learn how to manipulate. You will learn how to stop being manipulated by others and by your own conditioning. The goal is simple: to live by choice, not reflex. To respect yourself as much as you respect others, to say yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no, without guilt, without fear, without internal collapse. Let's begin. Island Chapter 1. The Compliance Reflex. Why no feels dangerous. A friend asks you to help them move this weekend. You're tired, you have plans, you don't want to go, but before you can think, your mouth says, "Sure, no problem." Later, you feel resentment, not toward them, toward yourself. Why did I say yes? Because saying no felt dangerous, not logically dangerous, emotionally dangerous. Your body sent a signal, refusing najan conflict, conflict najan threat, threat najan avoid, so you complied. This is the compliance reflex. It's not a decision, it's a survival pattern, and it was trained into you long before you had language to question it. How the reflex gets installed. You don't remember the exact moment you learned to comply, but your nervous system does. As a child, you tested boundaries. You said no. You resisted. You expressed what you wanted. And sometimes that was met with anger, coldness, disappointment, silence, punishment, withdrawal of affection. Your brain learned obedience, safety, resistance, danger. So you stopped resisting, not because you agreed, but because disagreement felt like abandonment. This is how compliance becomes reflex. It bypasses thought. It activates before you're aware. It feels like instinct, but it's not instinct. It's conditioning. Why no feels like rejection. To a compliant mind, saying no feels like letting someone down, being selfish, damaging the relationship, risking disapproval, proving you're not dependable. So you say yes to protect connection. But here's the paradox. Every time you say yes when you mean no, You disconnect from yourself. You betray your own needs. You ignore your own limits. You teach others that your boundaries don't matter. And over time, you stop knowing what you actually want, because want has been trained out of you. Scenarios where the reflex activates. 1. A coworker asks you to cover their shift. Again, you're exhausted, but you say yes because saying no feels harsh. 2. A family member expects you to attend an event you don't care about. You go because not going would upset them. 3. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence. You stop talking because asserting yourself feels aggressive. 4. A partner suggests plans you're not interested in. You agree because disagreeing feels like starting a fight. 5. A boss assigns you extra work with no extra time. You accept because pushing back feels like insubordination. 6. A stranger asks an invasive question. You answer because silence feels rude. In every case, the reflex is the same. Compliance, safety, resistance, some danger, the cost of reflexive obedience. When you obey automatically, you lose time, energy, respect from others and from yourself. Clarity about what you actually want, trust in your own judgment, and you start living reactively. Your life becomes shaped by other people's expectations, unspoken rules, fear of disapproval, guilt over imagined selfishness. You become a passenger in your own decisions, internal scripts that reclaim choice. These are not affirmations, they are awareness anchors, thoughts that restore internal authority. I notice pressure, not obligation. Discomfort doesn't mean danger. I'm allowed to pause before answering. Saying no doesn't make me selfish. I don't owe immediate compliance. I can choose based on my needs, not their comfort. Practical exercise. The pause protocol. This is the simplest way to interrupt the compliance reflex. When someone asks something of you, don't answer immediately. Take 3 seconds, breathe. Notice the pull to comply. Ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? Then choose, not from fear, not from guilt, from clarity. The pause doesn't guarantee you'll say no, but it guarantees the answer will be yours. Why this matters? The compliance reflex isn't evil. It helped you survive environments where obedience was rewarded and resistance was punished. But survival strategies don't always serve you once the environment changes. You are no longer a child dependent on approval. You are an adult capable of choice. And choice begins with awareness. Awareness that you don't have to say yes. Saying no is not rejection. Conflict is not catastrophe. Disapproval is not death. The reflex will still activate, but you don't have to obey it. You can notice it, pause, and choose. That's where freedom begins. Chapter 2. Guilt Engineering. How obligation gets installed. Your mother calls. She doesn't ask how you are. She sighs and says, I haven't heard from you in weeks. You weren't ignoring her. You've been busy, but suddenly you feel heavy. Guilt. You apologize. You promise to call more. You feel bad for days. This is guilt engineering, and it works without accusation, without anger, without force. Just a tone, a pause, a statement wrapped in disappointment. And your nervous system does the rest. What guilt really is. Guilt is supposed to be a signal, a correction mechanism. It tells you, I violated my own values. Healthy guilt says, I lied and I don't want to be someone who lies. I hurt someone and I care about that. It prompts repair. Then it dissolves. But engineered guilt is different. It doesn't come from violating your values. It comes from violating someone else's expectations. And it doesn't dissolve. It lingers. It controls. How guilt gets weaponized. Guilt works because you were taught, good people don't disappoint others. Good people sacrifice. Good people put others first. So when someone implies you've failed at being good, your nervous system panics. You feel shame, responsibility, the urge to fix it immediately. And that urge makes you compliant. Guilt becomes a remote control. The anatomy of a guilt trip. Guilt trips follow a pattern. Step 1. Imply harm or neglect. I guess I'm not important to you. Everyone else made time. I thought you cared. Step 2. Make it about their pain, not your choice. I'm always alone. No one ever helps me. I do everything for everyone, and this is what I get. Step 3. Wait. They don't demand. They just hurt, and you rush to fix it. This is how obligation gets installed without a single command. Scenarios where guilt controls. 1. A friend says, I always show up for you, but when I need something. You weren't unavailable. You were boundary setting, but now you feel selfish. 2. A parent says, do what you want. I'll be fine. Tone says otherwise. You cancel your plans. 3. A partner says, I guess I'm the only one who cares about us. You've been trying, but now you're scrambling to prove your love. 4. A manager says, I thought you were committed to this team. You declined extra unpaid work. Now you feel like a bad employee. 5. A sibling says, Mom's getting older. She won't be around forever. You're being manipulated into obligation disguised as love. 6. A colleague says, I wouldn't ask if I had anyone else. Translation. You're my last resort, but you still owe me. In each case, the guilt makes you comply, not because you want to, but because refusing feels like proof you're a bad person. Why guilt works. So well, guilt bypasses logic. It doesn't argue, it doesn't negotiate, it just hurts. And most people will do anything to stop emotional pain, even if that means abandoning their own needs. Guilt also feels like love. You think, if I feel bad, it means I care. If I don't feel bad, I'm heartless. But guilt is not the same as care. Care says, I value you and I'll help when I can. Guilt says, I'll help even when I can't because refusing makes me a bad person. One is choice, the other is control. The hidden message in guilt trips. Every guilt trip carries an unspoken rule. Your needs are less important than my comfort. When someone guilt trips you, they are saying, I don't care what you want. I care that you do what I want, and I will make you feel bad until you do. But they never say it that way, because if they did, you'd recognize it as manipulation. So instead, they cloak it in victimhood, in sadness, in disappointment, and you interpret it as, I failed them. Internal scripts that disarm guilt. I notice guilt, but I didn't violate my values. Their disappointment is not my responsibility. Caring about someone doesn't mean obeying them. I can say no and still be a good person. Guilt is a feeling, not a fact. I don't owe compliance to avoid their discomfort. Practical exercise. Guilt inventory for 1 week. Track every time you feel guilty. Write down what triggered it. What did I do or not do? Whose expectation did I violate? Was it my value or their demand? Most guilt you feel is not yours. It's inherited, conditioned, installed by others to keep you compliant. This exercise helps you see the difference between real guilt, I violated my integrity, and engineered guilt, I violated someone's control. How to respond without collapsing. When someone guilt trips you, you don't have to justify, apologize, explain, fix their feelings. You can simply acknowledge their emotion without absorbing it. Example responses: I hear that you're disappointed. I understand this isn't what you wanted. I know this is hard for you. Then stop. Don't chase their approval. Don't fix their discomfort. Don't collapse into compliance. Let them sit with their feelings, just like you sit with yours. Why this matters: guilt is one of the most effective compliance tools because it feels like morality. You think you're being selfless. You think you're being kind. You think you're being responsible, but you're not. You're being controlled. And the cost is your time, your energy, your self-respect, your ability to know what you actually want. Guilt-based obedience isn't love, it's fear. Fear of being seen as selfish, fear of disappointing others, fear of standing alone. But here's the truth. You are allowed to disappoint people. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to prioritize yourself, not because you're selfish, but because your needs matter too. Guilt will still show up, but you don't have to obey it. You can notice it, name it, and choose anyway. That's freedom. Chapter 3. Approval Addiction. The hidden need that controls you. You post something online, you check for likes, once, twice, 10 times, you say something in a meeting, no one reacts. You replay it in your mind for hours, you text someone. They don't reply quickly. You wonder what you did wrong. This is approval addiction, and it's one of the most invisible forms of control, because it doesn't come from others. It comes from you. You police yourself, you adjust yourself, you shrink yourself, all to stay liked. What approval addiction really is. Approval addiction is the belief that your value depends on how others see you, not what you think of yourself, not what you've accomplished, not who you are when no one's watching, but whether people approve. And when that belief runs deep, every interaction becomes a test. Did they like me? Did I say the right thing? Did I offend them? Am I still safe? You stop being yourself. You start being what you think they want. How it gets installed. As a child, you needed approval to survive. When caregivers were pleased, you felt safe. When they were disappointed, you felt threatened. So you learned. Approval, nakar safety. Disapproval, makar danger. You adjusted, you performed, you became who they needed you to be. And it worked, but the pattern didn't stop when childhood ended. Now, as an adult, you still seek validation, fear rejection. Modify your behavior based on others' reactions. Feel anxious when someone seems distant, not because you're weak, because your nervous system still equates disapproval with danger. The cost of living for approval. When you need approval, you lose authenticity, boundaries, self-trust, inner calm. You become reactive. Every decision is filtered through. What will they think? Will this upset them? Am I still liked? You stop asking, what do I want? What feels right to me? What serves my life? Your identity becomes a performance, and you're always one misstep away from collapse. Scenarios where approval controls. You won. You laugh at a joke you don't find funny because everyone else is laughing. 2. You agree with an opinion you don't hold, to avoid being the odd one out. 3. You apologize when you've done nothing wrong just to keep the peace. 4. You stay in a conversation that drains you because leaving feels rude. 5. You say yes to plans you don't want because saying no might upset them. 6. You over-explain yourself, trying to justify a perfectly reasonable choice. 7. You check your phone obsessively after sending a message, monitoring their response time like it's a verdict. In every case, the pattern is the same. You abandon yourself to stay accepted. The paradox of approval seeking. The more you need approval, the less respect you get. People sense it. They feel your anxiety, your eagerness, your willingness to fold, and unconsciously they treat you accordingly. Not because they're cruel, but because respect flows towards self-respect. When you don't value your own boundaries, others won't either. The difference between connection and approval: connection is mutual. Approval is one-sided. Connection says, I value you, you value me, we're both whole. Approval says, I need you to validate me so I can feel okay. One is relationship, the other is dependency. And dependency always creates imbalance. Internal scripts that break the addiction. I don't need to be liked by everyone. Disapproval is not danger. I can be kind without needing approval. Their reaction doesn't define my worth. I'm allowed to be misunderstood. Silence is not rejection. I choose based on my values, not their comfort. Practical exercise. The approval audit. For 3 days, notice every time you modify your behavior to gain approval. Examples. Laughing when you don't find something funny. Agreeing when you actually disagree. Apologizing when you've done nothing wrong. Over-explaining a simple no. Checking for validation after sharing something. Write it down. Don't judge yourself. Just notice. Awareness alone begins to weaken the pattern. How to choose without needing permission. Start small. Practice making decisions without consulting anyone. Order what you actually want at a restaurant. Say no to an invitation without justifying. Share an opinion without softening it. Let a text go unanswered for a few hours. Sit with the discomfort of someone being disappointed. At first, it will feel wrong. Your nervous system will panic. You'll feel selfish, rude, cold. But that feeling is not truth. It's conditioning. And the more you act despite it, the weaker it becomes. Why this matters: approval addiction isn't about being social. It's not about caring what people think. It's about needing their approval to feel okay. And that need makes you controllable. When you need someone's approval, you give them power over your choices, your mood, your sense of self. You become a mirror, reflecting back whatever keeps you safe. But you are not a mirror. You are a person with preferences, boundaries, opinions, limits. And those things don't require approval. You don't need permission to disagree. Say no. Be misunderstood. Prioritize yourself. Exist as you are. Approval will still feel good. That's normal. But it should never be the condition for your choices. When you stop living for approval, you start living from choice. And that's when you become uncontrollable. Chapter 5. Authority Bias. Why status overrides logic. A doctor tells you something that doesn't feel right. You don't question it. A manager asks you to do something inefficient. You comply. A confident person makes a claim with no evidence. You believe them. An expert speaks. You defer. Not because their reasoning is sound, but because their title, tone, or presence carries weight. This is authority bias, and it makes you obedient, not to truth, but to status. What authority bias really is. Authority bias is the tendency to trust someone's opinion based on their position, not their logic. You assume doctors know best, bosses are right, experts can't be wrong, confidence equals competence. So you stop thinking critically, you stop questioning, you defer. Not because you agree, but because challenging authority feels dangerous. How it gets installed from childhood. You were taught, listen to adults, respect teachers, obey parents, don't talk back. And in many cases, this was useful. Authority figures often did no more. They kept you safe. They guided you. But the lesson you absorbed wasn't evaluate authority and choose to follow when it makes sense. The lesson was authority is always right. Obedience is always safe. And now, as an adult, you still carry that reflex. The cost of blindly following authority. When you obey authority without question, you ignore your intuition, abandon critical thinking, accept bad decisions, enable incompetence, give away your power. You become passive. Someone with a title tells you what to do, and you do it, even when it contradicts your experience, your values, your common sense. Scenarios where authority bias controls you. A doctor dismisses your symptoms. You don't get a second opinion because doctors know best. 2. A manager enforces a pointless rule. You follow it without question because that's the policy. 3. A confident speaker makes a bold claim. You accept it as fact because they sounded certain. 4. A parent insists on a life choice for you. You comply because they've lived longer. 5. A financial advisor recommends something that feels off. You agree anyway because they're the expert. 6. A public figure shares misinformation. You believe it because of their platform, not their proof. In every case, you defer to the role, not the reasoning. Why authority bias is so powerful. Your brain uses shortcuts. Evaluating every claim takes energy. So your brain asks, is this person credible? If yes, it accepts the information without deep analysis. This works most of the time, but it also makes you vulnerable to manipulation by confident frauds, obedience to incompetent leaders, compliance with harmful systems, because authority bias doesn't evaluate truth, it evaluates status. The difference between respect and blind obedience. Respect says, I value your experience, I'll consider your input, I'll make my own decision. Blind obedience says, you have a title, so I won't question you. One is discernment, the other is submission. Confidence is not competence, authority. Bias is amplified by confidence. A person who speaks with certainty feels more credible, even if they're wrong. You've seen this. The loud person in the meeting gets believed. The hesitant expert gets ignored. Confidence triggers trust. But confidence is a communication style, not proof of knowledge. Someone can be confidently wrong, loudly incompetent, charismatically harmful, and if you mistake their tone for truth, you give away your judgment. Internal scripts that restore critical thinking. Title doesn't equal truth. I'm allowed to question authority. Confidence is not the same as competence. I can respect someone and still disagree. Authority serves me. I don't serve authority. I trust my judgment as much as theirs. I can ask for evidence. Practical exercise. Question without aggression. Practice asking calm, respectful questions in situations where you'd normally defer. Can you explain why? What's the reasoning behind this? Is there another way to approach it? I'm not sure I follow. Can you clarify? You're not challenging their authority. You're engaging your own thinking. Authority figures who deserve respect will welcome questions. Those who react defensively reveal insecurity, not expertise. How to evaluate authority. Properly ask yourself, does this person have relevant expertise in this specific area? Are they basing this on evidence or opinion? Do they welcome questions or shut them down? Am I agreeing because it makes sense or because they have status? If you're only agreeing because of their role, pause. Consider, what does my experience say? What does my intuition say? What would I think if this same advice came from someone without a title? Why this matters. Authority bias makes you controllable. When you defer automatically, you stop thinking. And when you stop thinking, you become compliant, exploitable, easy to mislead. This doesn't mean reject all authority. It means evaluate authority. Respect expertise without surrendering judgment. Ask questions. Trust yourself as much as you trust the title. Authority is a tool. It can guide. It can inform. But it should never replace your own discernment. You are not a child anymore. You don't need permission to think. You don't need a title to be right. You don't need status to trust your own experience. Authority can advise, but you decide. That's not rebellion. That's sovereignty. Chapter 6. Framing and Default Traps. Someone asks, do you want to meet at 6 or 7? You pick one, but you never asked yourself, do I want to meet at all? This is a framing trap. The question was designed to make you choose between two options, both of which serve the asker. Your real preference was never on the table, and you didn't notice, because the frame felt like a choice. What framing is the way a question, situation, or decision is presented. It shapes what you see. It limits what you consider. It directs your attention. And most of the time, you don't realize it's happening. You think you're choosing freely. but the options were selected for you. The context was built around you. The path was laid before you arrived. All you did was walk it. How framing controls. Framing works by presenting limited options as if they're the only options, making one choice seem default or normal, embedding assumptions into the question. Example: are you going to apologize now or later? The frame assumes you will apologize. The only question is when. If you accept the frame, you've already lost. Because the real question should be, do I need to apologize at all? Default traps. A default is the option that happens if you do nothing, and most people follow defaults, not because they prefer them, but because resisting requires effort. Examples of defaults: the pre-checked box on a website, the suggested meeting time, the standard contract terms, the group plan no one questioned, the expectation that you'll say yes unless you explicitly say no. Defaults are powerful because they feel neutral. They require no justification. Choosing differently feels like making a fuss, so you go along, not because you agree, but because disagreeing feels harder. Scenarios where framing and defaults control you. 1. A salesperson asks, will you pay in full or in installments? The frame assumes you're buying. The real question is, do I want this at all? 2. A manager says, can you stay late today or tomorrow? The frame assumes you'll stay late. The real question is this my responsibility? 3. A partner says, do you want to go to my parents this weekend or next? The frame assumes you're going. The real question is, do I want to go at all? 4. A form auto-enrolls you in emails unless you uncheck a box. The default is compliance. Opting out requires noticing and acting. 5. A friend says, let's grab dinner. Does 7 work? The frame assumes you're available. The real question is, do I want to have dinner tonight? 6. A group chat decides on plans. No one asks if you're interested. Silence becomes agreement. The default is participation. In every case, the frame narrows your options before you even start thinking. Why framing works. So well, your brain conserves energy. When options are presented, it evaluates within the given frame, not outside it. Questioning the frame requires awareness, effort, willingness to disrupt. Most people don't do that, so they choose from the menu they're given, even when the menu was designed to serve someone else. The embedded assumption trick. Framing often hides assumptions inside questions. Why are you always so defensive? Assumption: you are defensive. When will you start taking this seriously? Assumption: you're not taking it seriously. How are you going to fix this? Assumption: it's your responsibility to fix. If you respond to the question, you accept the assumption. The frame wins before you speak. Internal scripts that break the frame. Is this the only option? Who decided these are the choices? What am I not being asked? What's the assumption here? Do I actually want any of these options? I can create a third option. I don't have to choose from this menu. Practical exercise. Spot the frame for 1 week. Notice when questions or situations present limited options. Ask yourself, what options aren't being offered? What's the hidden assumption? What would I choose if the frame didn't exist? Examples. Do you want coffee or tea? Maybe I want water. Will you reply now or later? Maybe I won't reply at all. Should we do this on Monday or Tuesday? Maybe we shouldn't do it. You don't have to reject every frame, but you should see it. Because once you see it, you can choose whether to accept it. How to reject a frame without conflict. You don't have to argue, you don't have to explain, you can simply reframe. Examples: them. Do you want to meet at 6 or 7? You. Actually, I'm not available tonight, let's find another time. Them. Will you take on this project or that one? You. I don't have bandwidth for either right now. Them. Are you going to apologize now or later? You. I don't think an apology is needed. Calm. Clear. No justification. You're not rejecting them. You're rejecting the frame. Why this matters: framing and defaults are invisible control. They don't force you, they guide you, and because they feel neutral, you don't resist. You think, I'm just being reasonable. I'm going with the flow. I'm not making a big deal. But compliance disguised as ease is still compliance. And over time, you stop questioning, whose agenda am I following? Whose convenience am I serving? What do I actually want? You become a passenger in decisions that were framed for you. But you don't have to accept every frame. You can. Notice the options you're given. Ask what's missing. Create alternatives. Choose outside the menu. This isn't rebellion, it's discernment, and discernment is the foundation of real choice. Chapter 7. Social Scripts. Living by rules. You never agreed to. You walk into an elevator. Someone says, "How are you?" You say, "Good, you." You don't mean it, they don't care, but you both follow the script. Because that's what people do. This is a social script. A pattern of behavior you perform automatically. Not because you chose it, but because it's expected. And your entire life is full of them. What social scripts are. Social scripts are unwritten rules about how to behave, what to say, when to comply, how to show respect. You weren't taught them explicitly. You absorbed them through observation, through correction, through social reward and punishment. And now, you follow them without thinking. Not because they serve you, but because breaking them feels dangerous. How social scripts get installed. As a child, you learned, say please and thank you. Don't interrupt. Smile when someone gives you something. Apologize when you bump into someone. These aren't bad rules. But you also learned, don't ask too many questions. Don't correct adults. Don't say no to authority. Don't make a scene. Don't be difficult. And those scripts didn't stop in childhood. Now, as an adult, you still say yes when you mean no. Apologize for things that aren't your fault. Laugh at jokes you don't find funny. Stay in conversations you want to leave. Suppress your needs to avoid awkwardness. Because the script says be polite, be agreeable, be easy. The cost of living by script. When you follow scripts automatically, you lose authenticity, agency, self-respect. You become predictable, controllable, invisible because the script isn't designed for your truth. It's designed for social smoothness. And smoothness comes at the cost of honesty. Scenarios where social scripts control you. 1. Someone asks, "Can I ask you a question?" You say yes, even though you're busy. Script, be available. 2. A relative hugs you. You don't want to be touched, but you hug back. Script, don't reject affection. 3. Someone talks at you for 20 minutes. You listen, drained, unable to leave. Script, don't be rude. 4. A cashier asks, "How's your day?" You say, "Good," even if it's been terrible. Script, keep it light. 5. Someone gives you unsolicited advice. You nod politely instead of saying you didn't ask. Script, respect your elders, authority, helpers. 6. You're invited to something you don't want to attend. You make an excuse instead of simply declining. Script, soften rejection. In every case, the script overrides what you actually feel, want, or need. Why scripts feel mandatory. Scripts feel like social law. Breaking them triggers guilt, anxiety, fear of judgment, fear of being seen as rude, difficult, cold, selfish. So you comply, not because the script makes sense, but because violating it feels like violating your place in the group. And humans are wired to fear exile. The invisible script of niceness. One of the most powerful scripts is be nice, Nice means don't upset anyone, don't inconvenience anyone, don't assert yourself too strongly. Prioritize others' comfort over your own truth. And niceness becomes a trap, because nice people don't set boundaries, nice people don't say no. Nice people absorb disrespect to keep peace, and the cost is your voice, your time, your self-respect. Niceness isn't kindness. Kindness is intentional. Niceness is compliance. Scripts that keep you small. Don't make waves. Don't be difficult. Don't take up too much space. Don't be too much. These scripts teach you your presence is a burden, your needs are inconvenient, your truth is disruptive, so you shrink, apologize, minimize, not because you believe it, but because the script demands it. Internal scripts that restore your agency. I don't have to follow every social rule. Politeness is not the same as self-abandonment. I can be kind without being compliant. I'm allowed to break the script. Discomfort is not danger. I don't owe performance. I can choose which norms I follow. Practical exercise. Script interruption. For 1 week, intentionally break small social scripts. Examples. Don't say sorry when someone bumps into you. Answer, how are you? Honestly once. Decline an invitation without making an excuse. Leave a boring conversation without waiting for permission. Say, I'd rather not, instead of inventing a reason. Notice what happens. Most of the time, nothing. People adjust. The world doesn't collapse. You don't get exiled. But your nervous system learns, breaking the script is safe. How to choose your scripts consciously. Not all scripts are bad. Some create ease, some show respect, some build connection. The problem isn't the script, it's the autopilot, so the goal is follow the scripts that serve you. Reject the ones that don't. Ask yourself, is this rule helping me or controlling me? Am I doing this because I want to or because I'm afraid not to? Would I follow this rule if no one was watching? If the answer is fear, it's time to question the script. Why this matters. You are not required to perform. You are not required to. Be endlessly available. Be endlessly agreeable. Suppress your needs for social ease. Follow norms that hurt you. Social scripts are useful when chosen consciously. But when followed blindly, they become chains. You stop asking, what do I want? What feels right? What serves my life? And you start asking, what's expected? What's normal? What will keep me safe? But safety built on performance is fragile. Real safety comes from self-trust. And self-trust begins when you stop living by scripts you never agreed to. You don't have to rebel, you don't have to reject all norms. But you do have to decide, which rules are mine? Which rules serve me? Which scripts am I willing to follow? And which ones am I ready to rewrite? That choice is yours, and it always has been. Chapter 8. Shame and Reputation. The invisible leash. You think about doing something, then you imagine what people would say, and you stop, not because you don't want to, but because you can't bear the judgment. This is the invisible leash. Shame doesn't need to be spoken, it doesn't need to be real. Just the fear of it is enough to control you. What shame really is the belief that if people knew the truth about me, I would be rejected. It's not about what you did, it's about who you are. Guilt says I made a mistake. Shame says I am a mistake. And when shame lives inside you, you police yourself constantly. You hide, you perform, you curate, not to be seen, but to avoid being exposed. How shame gets installed. Shame is taught early, when you were punished not for what you did but for who you were, when you were told, what's wrong with you? You should be ashamed. Don't embarrass me. What will people think? You learned, your worth depends on how others see you. Being flawed is dangerous. Reputation is survival. And now, even as an adult, you carry that voice. It doesn't come from others anymore, it comes from you. The difference between shame and reputation. Management reputation is external. It's how others perceive you. Shame is internal. It's how you perceive yourself through the eyes of imagined judgment. You don't manage your reputation because it's strategic. You manage it because shame whispers, if they see the real you, they'll leave. The cost of living under shame. When shame controls you, you hide parts of yourself, perform versions of yourself, exhaust yourself maintaining an image. Avoid risks that might expose you, shrink to stay safe. You become a curated version, a filtered self, a performance, and beneath it all you feel fraudulent, tired, alone, because no one knows the real you, not because they rejected you, but because you never let them see you. Scenarios where shame controls you. You want to try something new, but you imagine failing publicly, so you don't start. 2. You made a mistake at work. You replay it obsessively, imagining everyone judging you, even though no one mentioned it again. 3. You want to set a boundary, but you worry people will call you selfish, so you stay silent. 4. You're struggling, but you pretend everything's fine, because admitting difficulty feels like admitting weakness. 5. You have an unpopular opinion. You keep it to yourself, because being misunderstood feels like being cast out. 6. You post something online. You delete it minutes later, because the imagined criticism felt unbearable. In every case, shame isn't being inflicted on you. You're inflicting it on yourself. Through the lens of imagined judgment, why shame is so powerful. Shame bypasses logic. It doesn't need evidence. It doesn't need proof. It just whispers, they're thinking it. They're judging you. You'll be exposed, and your nervous system reacts as if it's true. Even when no one said anything, no one noticed, no one cares as much as you think. Shame lives in the gap between who you are and who you think you need to be. The reputation trap. You think, if I maintain the right image, I'll be safe. So you say the right things, hide the wrong things, perform competence, perform confidence, perform ease, but the cost is exhaustion, because reputation management is a full-time job, and it never ends. There's always another judgment to avoid, another flaw to hide, another version to perform. Internal scripts that disarm shame. I am not my mistakes. Being flawed is not the same as being unworthy. I don't need to be perfect to be valuable. Other people's opinions are not facts. I can be misunderstood and still be okay. Shame is a feeling, not truth. I don't owe anyone a curated version of myself. Practical exercise. Shame exposure. This is uncomfortable, but it works. Choose one small thing you've been hiding out of shame. Examples: a mistake you made, a struggle you're facing, an opinion you've been afraid to voice, a boundary you've been afraid to set. Share it with one safe person, not for validation, not for advice, just to practice being seen without the performance. Notice the shame spike before you speak, the relief after, the fact that you weren't rejected. Shame loses power when it's brought into the light. How to separate self-worth from reputation. Ask yourself, if no one ever knew about this, would I still feel ashamed? If the answer is no, it's not about you, it's about imagined judgment. Your worth is not what people think, what people say, how you're perceived. Your worth is inherent. It doesn't increase with praise. It doesn't decrease with criticism. You are valuable because you exist, not because you perform well. Why this matters: shame keeps you small. It keeps you hiding, performing, seeking approval, avoiding risk, living for an audience that may not even be watching. And the invisible leash tightens every time you edit yourself, suppress yourself, shrink yourself. But here's the truth. You will be judged no matter what you do. You will be misunderstood, criticized, disliked by some. That's not avoidable, but living in fear of it is optional. You can accept that judgment exists. Choose to live truthfully anyway. Let people think what they think. Trust that the right people will stay. Shame wants you to believe exposure calm destruction. But exposure is actually freedom. Because when you stop hiding, you stop performing. And when you stop performing, you start living. Not for an imagined audience, but for yourself. That's where the leash breaks. Chapter 9. Timing and Pressure. How Urgency Breaks Judgment. Someone says, I need an answer now. Your mind goes blank, your chest tightens, you feel rushed. So you say yes, not because you want to, but because the pressure removed your ability to think. This is urgency as control. And it works, not by force, but by collapsing the space you need to choose clearly. What urgency does to your brain. When you're rushed, your brain shifts into survival mode. It stops evaluating. It stops weighing options. It stops considering consequences. It just reacts. And reaction is not the same as decision. A decision is conscious. A reaction is automatic. Urgency removes consciousness. And without consciousness, you become controllable. How pressure manipulates choice. Pressure works by creating artificial scarcity. Scarcity of time, scarcity of options, scarcity of safety. Examples. This offer expires today. I need to know right now. If you don't decide, someone else will. We're running out of time. The message is clear. Delay, loss. So you act fast. Not because the urgency is real, but because your nervous system treats it as real. The cost of rushed decisions. When you decide under pressure, you ignore your intuition, skip important questions, agree to things you'll regret, miss red flags, abandon your needs. And afterward you wonder, why did I say yes? Because you didn't have time to think. That was the point. Scenarios where urgency controls. You won. A salesperson says this price is only good today. You buy, not because you need it, but because you fear missing out. 2. A boss says I need this done by end of day. You agree, even though the timeline is unrealistic. 3. A partner says we need to decide about this relationship now. You commit or break up under pressure instead of taking the time you need. 4. A friend says, can you cover for me right now? You say yes before checking your schedule. 5. An investor says, if you don't sign today, the deal's off. You sign without reading the terms carefully. 6. Someone texts, can you call me? It's urgent. You panic and drop everything, only to find it wasn't urgent at all. In every case, urgency removed your ability to pause, reflect, and choose. Why urgency feels real. Your brain is wired to respond to urgency. Historically, urgent meant danger, survival, immediate action required. So when someone creates urgency, your nervous system activates. Even when the urgency is manufactured, even when waiting wouldn't cause harm, your body doesn't know the difference between a lion is chasing you and this sale ends tonight. Both trigger the same stress response, and stress collapses judgment. The difference between real urgency and manufactured urgency. Real urgency, a medical emergency, a safety threat, a time-sensitive legal or logistical deadline. Manufactured urgency, pressure designed to make you act without thinking. Ask yourself, what happens if I wait? Who benefits from my quick decision? Is this timeline real, or is it designed to control me? Most urgency is manufactured, and most of the time you can wait. Internal scripts that restore thinking space. I don't make decisions under pressure. Urgency is often artificial. I'm allowed to take time. If the offer disappears, it wasn't right for me. I can say I need to think about it. Rushing benefits them, not me. I trust slow decisions more than fast ones. Practical exercise. The 24-hour rule. When someone pressures you for an immediate answer, don't give one. Say, I need time to think. I'll get back to you tomorrow. I don't decide under pressure. Then step away, breathe, reflect, evaluate without the urgency. You'll often find the urgency was fake. The decision becomes clear when you're calm. The pressure was designed to bypass your judgment. And if they can't wait 24 hours? That's a red flag. How to recognize pressure tactics. Watch for these patterns. 1. Artificial deadlines. Today only. Last chance. Offer expires soon. 2. Scarcity language. Limited spots. Almost gone. Others are interested. 3. Emotional escalation. I can't believe you're making me wait. I thought you cared. This is really important. 4. Consequences for delay. If you don't decide now, you'll lose this. Someone else will take it. I can't hold it for you. All of these are designed to bypass your thinking, trigger fear of loss, force compliance, how to respond without collapse. You don't have to argue. You don't have to justify. You can simply hold your boundary. I understand this feels urgent to you. I still need time. I don't make rushed decisions. If I can't have time to think, my answer is no. Calm, clear, final. If they respect you, they'll wait. If they don't, you've learned something important. Why this matters. Urgency is one of the most effective tools of control. Because it feels legitimate. It feels like responsibility, efficiency, being helpful. But urgency that removes your ability to think is not efficiency. It's manipulation. And every time you comply under pressure, you teach your nervous system. Fast decisions are safer than thoughtful ones, but they're not. Thoughtful decisions protect you. Fast decisions often serve someone else. You are allowed to take time, think clearly, consult your intuition, sleep on it, say no to rushed timelines. Real opportunities don't disappear because you took a day to think. Manipulative ones do. And that's how you know the difference. Pressure is not urgency. Pressure is control. And the moment you reclaim your time, you reclaim your choice. Chapter 10. Internal sovereignty. Choosing without pull. You've learned how compliance gets installed. You've seen the mechanisms that make you obey. Now comes the final shift. Choosing from internal authority instead of external pull. This is sovereignty, not rebellion, not independence for its own sake, but the quiet ability to decide based on what's true for you, not what's expected, demanded, or conditioned. What internal sovereignty is. Sovereignty means your decisions come from you, not from fear of conflict, need for approval, guilt, pressure, scripts, shame, urgency. Those forces will still exist, but they no longer determine your choices. You feel them, you notice them, and you choose anyway. The difference between reaction and response. Reaction is automatic. It's driven by conditioning, fear, reflex. Response is conscious. It's driven by awareness, clarity, choice. Sovereignty is the shift from reaction to response. You stop being controlled by the pull. You start choosing, calmly, clearly, without collapse. How sovereignty feels. It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels quiet, grounded, steady. You're not fighting anyone. You're not proving anything. You're just clear about what you want. Calm when others pressure you. Able to say no without guilt. Able to say yes without resentment. It's not dominance. It's self-possession. The foundations of sovereignty. Sovereignty is built on 4 pillars. 1. Awareness. You see the pull before it controls you. You notice guilt, pressure, urgency, framing. You recognize when you're being moved by fear instead of choice. 2. Pause. You create space between stimulus and response. You don't react immediately. You breathe, you think, you choose. 3. Boundaries. You know what you will and won't accept. You state it calmly. You don't negotiate your limits to keep peace. 4. Self-trust. You trust your judgment as much as you trust authority. You trust your intuition as much as you trust others' opinions. You trust that you can handle the consequences of your choices. When these 4 are strong, you become unmanipulable. Not because you're hard, but because you're whole. Scenarios of sovereign choice. 1. Someone asks for something you don't want to give. You feel the pull to comply. You pause. You say, "No, that doesn't work for me." Calm, clear, done. 2. Someone tries to guilt you. You notice the emotional tug. You don't absorb it. You say, "I understand you're disappointed. My decision stands." 3. Someone pressures you to decide quickly. You feel the urgency. You recognize it's manufactured. You say, "I need time. I'll let you know tomorrow." 4. Someone frames a question to limit your options. You see the frame. You step outside it. You say, "Actually, I'm going to approach this differently." 5. A social script tells you to stay silent. You feel the pull to comply. You choose to speak anyway. You say what's true, without aggression, without apology. 6. Shame whispers that you'll be judged. You notice it. You act anyway. You trust that being real is worth the risk. In each case, the pull is still there, but you're no longer controlled by it. Internal scripts that anchor sovereignty. I notice the pull. I don't have to follow it. I choose based on my values, not their comfort. Discomfort is not danger. I'm allowed to take my time. I don't owe explanations. I trust myself. I can handle the consequences of my choice. I'm not responsible for managing their emotions. My boundaries are not up for negotiation. I decide what's right for me. Practical exercise. The Sovereignty Journal for 2 weeks. Track your decisions. After each choice, ask, did I choose this or did I comply? Was I acting from clarity or fear? Did I pause or did I react? Did I honor my boundary or did I fold? Don't judge yourself. Just notice. Awareness is the first step. Once you see the pattern, you can change it. How to strengthen sovereignty. Daily sovereignty isn't a destination. It's a practice. Small daily choices build it. Say no to one thing you'd normally agree to. Pause 3 seconds before answering a request. Speak up once when you'd normally stay silent. Set one boundary without apologizing. Let someone be disappointed without fixing it. Choose based on what you want, not what's easiest. Every time you choose consciously, you strengthen the muscle. Every time you pause instead of react, you reclaim power. The cost of sovereignty. Sovereignty isn't free, it costs. Approval from some people, comfort in some relationships. The illusion of control over others' feelings. Some people won't like it. They'll call you selfish, difficult, cold, changed. Because you stopped being easy to control. And that threatens the dynamic they relied on. Let them adjust. Or let them leave. Your sovereignty is not negotiable. The gift of sovereignty. When you choose from internal authority, you gain clarity, calm, self-respect, energy, authenticity. You stop performing, shrinking, exhausting yourself to manage others' reactions. You start living truthfully, speaking honestly, choosing deliberately. And the people who stay, they stay because of who you are, not because of who you pretend to be. That's real connection. Why this matters. You were not born to obey. You were not born to please everyone, avoid conflict at all costs, live by scripts you never chose, suppress yourself to keep others comfortable. You were born to choose, and every time you choose consciously, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Sovereignty is not about rejecting others. It's about no longer abandoning yourself. It's about living from the inside out, instead of being shaped by every external pull. It's quiet, it's grounded, it's yours, and no one can take it from you. Unless you give it away. So stop giving it away. Pause, notice, Choose. That's sovereignty. That's freedom. Conclusion. Calm resistance as a way of life. You've reached the end of this book, but this is not the end of the work, because sovereignty is not something you learn once and keep forever. It's something you practice. Daily, quietly, in small moments that no one else sees. What you now know. You know how obedience gets installed. You know why guilt works. You know how approval becomes a leash. You know why conflict feels like danger. You know how authority overrides logic. You know how framing shapes your choices before you make them. You know how social scripts run silently in the background. You know how shame keeps you small. You know how urgency collapses judgment. And you know how to choose anyway. Not by fighting, not by rebelling, not by rejecting everything, but by pausing, noticing, choosing consciously. This is not about becoming hard. Sovereignty is not coldness, it's not detachment, it's not refusal to care, it's the ability to care without collapsing, to be kind without being controlled, to be open without being exploitable, to be respectful without being submissive. You don't have to become someone else, you just have to stop abandoning yourself. The shift is subtle. You won't suddenly become unshakable, you'll still feel the pull to comply. The fear of disappointing someone, the discomfort of setting a boundary, the guilt when someone's upset. But you'll also feel something else, the pause, the choice, the quiet knowledge that you don't have to follow every pull. That's the shift. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's the moment you notice the reflex and choose differently anyway. What happens next? Some people will adjust. They'll respect your boundaries. They'll appreciate your honesty. They'll value the real you more than the performed version. Others won't. They'll push back. They'll call you selfish. They'll say you've changed. And they're right. You have changed. You've stopped being easy to control. Let them be uncomfortable. You've been uncomfortable your entire life trying to manage their feelings. Now it's their turn to sit with it. You don't owe compliance. You don't owe immediate answers, endless availability, explanations for your boundaries, performance of agreeability, self-abandonment to keep peace. You are allowed to say no, take time, disagree, prioritize yourself, let people be disappointed, not because you're selfish, but because you're sovereign. This is a practice, not a destination. You will still say yes when you mean no sometimes. Fold under pressure occasionally. React instead of respond. Forget to pause. That's normal. Sovereignty is not perfection. It's the slow, steady reclaiming of choice. Every time you pause, you win. Every time you notice the pull, you win. Every time you choose based on your truth instead of their comfort, you win. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if no one notices, you'll know. And that's what matters. The invitation. This book gave you tools. Now you decide what to do with them. You can go back to automatic compliance or practice conscious choice. You can live by scripts you never agreed to or rewrite the ones that don't serve you. You can stay small to stay safe or risk being seen to live freely. The choice is yours. It always has been. Final thought. Calm resistance is not aggression. It's not defiance. It's not rejection of connection. It's the quiet refusal to abandon yourself. It's choosing truth over comfort. It's choosing clarity over approval. It's choosing sovereignty over safety. And when you do that, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, your life changes. Not because the world becomes easier, but because you become solid, grounded, clear, unshakable. Not because nothing moves you, but because you've learned to notice the pull and choose anyway. That's freedom. That's sovereignty. That's yours. Thank you for listening to this audiobook. If these ideas resonated with you, please support this work by subscribing to the channel, leaving a like, and turning on notifications so you don't miss future content. Your support helps us reach more people who are ready to reclaim their choices and live with calm authority. Stay grounded, stay sovereign, stay free. If this audiobook has brought you clarity, strength, or peace, consider supporting the channel so more people can find this message. Please like this audio and subscribe. Your support helps this work reach those who feel overwhelmed, anxious, or unprotected, and gives them a path back to calm, confidence, and emotional freedom. Thank you for listening. Stay grounded. Stay wise. You are the anchor in every storm.